Testing, testing. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at E-Commerce Expo. I've been reminded before we kick off for you all to put your headphones on, which looks like most of you are in the process of doing. So I'm Kieran Kent. I'm the CEO of Propeller Group. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. We've got a great panel line up here to talk about the subjects of retail media and what's next. Representation on the panel from ASOS, Co-op, and John Lewis, so a really good panel lineup, and I'll introduce them in more detail very shortly. But over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to have a discussion about the current retail media landscape. We'll talk about the opportunities, some of the challenges currently within the market, and we'll talk about real-world examples of retailers and brands that are getting their strategies right. In terms of the overall marketplace for retail media, it's clear that this is a growing sector year on year. If you look at the latest Group M data, by the end of this year, the industry will be representative of £117 billion on a global basis in terms of retail media. There'll be 17% growth in the course of this year, and retail media will be the fastest, or already is, the fastest growing digital media channel. So clearly a great opportunity for those companies that get their strategy right. Just very quickly before I introduce the panel, quick word on Propeller, the company that I'm here representing. We are a PR, marketing and business development agency. We work with companies in the retail, marketing, advertising and technology sectors, helping them to raise their profile and to grow their businesses. Very quick word, we're also looking after the press office here today, so anyone that's exhibiting at either E-Commerce Expo or Technology for Marketing that's got a story to tell, needs to get more engagement with the trade media, head in that direction afterwards to the press office. My colleagues will be able to help you. But that's enough about me and Propeller. I'd like to now introduce the great panel that we have here. I will start on the far side, which is Kaitlin Craig. Kaitlin is the Proposition Strategy and Development Manager at the John Lewis Partnership. She is responsible for driving transformation and evolving the John Lewis and Waitrose retail media portfolio across digital channels. Prior to this, she held various roles across e-commerce and digital marketing at Hotel Chocolat and Danone. Elton Ollerhead is Director of ASOS Media Group. He spent his career in digital advertising and retail media, working for companies such as Sky, dunnhumby, Tesco and Amazon. And now in his role at ASOS, he has P&L and ad proposition responsibility for the ASOS Retail Media Network.
Thanks.
And lastly, Ellie Prendergast is Retail Media Lead at Co-op Media Network. She leads sales and operations for Co-op's retail media units, and prior to this she held media and merchandising roles at Asda. And a very quick fact, because she did put it on her bio online, outside of work she's an offensive lineman for Great Britain Women's American Football Team. Now we'll get you on a sports panel maybe in future to talk more about that, Ellie, but today we have to stick to retail media. So let's get into it. Obviously I mentioned those Group M stats and the size of the market and the opportunity. So let's get your perspectives on what's really driving growth in retail media right now. Kaitlin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so it's definitely a hot topic, which is a really exciting industry to work in. At John Lewis, I wouldn't say it's an emerging channel. So John Lewis has been around for over 100 years. And as part of that, there's always been an element of retail media. We've always been looking to collaborate with our brands and get the best experience for both our customers and our brands. That being said, that focus was a lot on above the line activity. And now with the tech partners, probably a lot of them here today, you'll see that there's more below the funnel and full funnel opportunities that you can play into. So I think that's really where the change is coming from and the investment from those brands that are really investing into the propositions. It's really exciting, as you said, and in Europe, in the European market, it's set to be worth $25 billion billion euros, by 2026. So yes, it's a hot topic. There's lots of news about it right now, and it's a really exciting industry to work in.
Great. Elton, what's your perspective? Why is it such a hot topic right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with Kaitlin. I mean, especially the grocers have been doing it for decades. So,
Yeah.
It hasn't really necessarily been in a as sophisticated manner as we see today with all the ad tech, but you've had lots of media in aisles and in store for many decades. And especially even in the UK, we've got some really advanced offerings from some of our big retailers over here. But from my point of view, it's very much about that kind of ad tech, the closed loop attribution, the fact that brands can actually see the return on their investment and the return on their ad spend. And that's been one of the key drivers we've seen, especially over the last decade, with the real kind of proliferation of ad tech, sponsored ads, low funnel display ads, and so on. So I think it's the accountability of the media that's been a massive attraction and really created momentum.
Great. Ellie, how about you? What's driving demand at Co-op?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As Kaitlin and Elton have alluded to, retail media's been around for a long time, but if I could suggest like 3 main reasons why there's been a sort of boost more recently, I'd say obviously we had first-party data, shopper behaviour and media innovation. So we obviously had Google announce the deprecation of third-party cookie, which has created a real boost in the need for first-party data and a real opportunity for retailers as well. Even though that's been paused, it was still an opportunity, and it's still an opportunity today. In terms of shopper behaviour, customers aren't just shopping in one retail store anymore. They shop around, they will be on discounters, they'll shop online, quick commerce as well. So actually being able to speak to a specific customer has become a lot more fragmented over the past few years. And then because of that, we've had a real explosion in media touchpoints from retailers as well, across in-store and online, to help meet that need to talk to those customers. So it's all led to a huge growth opportunity, but from our point of view specifically at Co-op, we're a convenience retail media network as well, and we've actually seen ourselves growing ahead of the market in the UK, and we absolutely see it as a sub-market of retail media as well.
Great. Well, let's talk now about your own retail media journeys within the businesses that you work for. And Elton, I'll start with you, because you've said retail media on one level isn't a new concept, and ASOS ultimately have a history in magazine publishing.
Big focus on style, trend and fashion, obviously. We actually had the largest fashion magazine in the UK for many years. It was run between 2007 and 19, and of course you need to monetize that and fund a magazine. So that was one of our early retail media offerings. We had a team of kind of salespeople who supported that publication, and it was almost like a filter for what ASOS was. You know, it was the fashion lens that we brought to the relationship with our brands, which they loved, and it also started a relationship with brands where we started working on, you know, how do we produce shoots with brands to position their brand and their clothing and their products through a fashion lens, through the ASOS lens. And it's also about the audience that we had. So it's very much a young 20-something fashion-focused audience, still is. And, you know, we speak to our customers in a, you know, it's more like how you speak to your friend. Or should I say how 20-somethings would speak to each other. You know, it's more relaxed, slightly irreverent. There is a little bit of an edginess to it, tending towards fashion and trend. And that's really one of the attractions that the brands like about ASOS. And as we've developed over time, obviously we've had to morph into more digital, a more digital proposition, and also think about how do we develop a more digital portfolio or a vehicle to deliver that content to our customers. So Ella was talking about first-party data, customer behavior. You know, that's obviously critical, and we want to make sure that as retailers we're putting the right content in front of our customers, both from a kind of overall product perspective as a retailer, but also as a retail media perspective. You know, you want your ads to be additive, you want it to help the customer in their decision-making process, and ideally you want them to see stuff that they're going to buy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're headed. Like I said, over the past few years, it's been much more focused on digital media and developing that proposition. So implementing the different ad products through the funnel, from sponsored ads, which is quite low funnel, display, which you can do a bit of low and upper funnel, social media, and of course the direct mail, where you can really do a lot of targeting. So it's that delivery of content, and I think all of us are kind of, and all of the retailers out there are grappling with how do you build a cohesive set of ad products to deliver your message in a joined up way, and often there's a lot of different providers you might work with if you're not the size of Amazon or the bigger players who will build their own proprietary software.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to some of those points later and challenges and how you work with the vendor community. But Ellie, tell us a bit more now about the Co-op retail media journey, and what's the focus for you right now?
Yeah, so of course, before retail media and retail media networks were sort of launched, like a lot of retailers will have had media centres within the business, and we've had a media centre for sort of over 10 years at Co-op. We partnered with SMG 7 years ago, and we've had really great growth over the years. But I think something that really step changed for us was our CMO stood up at our IGD supplier event last year and announced the 3 key strategic priorities for the entire Co-op business, and retail media was one of them. So even though we've sort of got a proven concept of growth throughout the years in terms of retail media income, having the senior support from the business has really step changed and expedited everything that we've wanted to do. So in terms of media innovation, for example, as with any retailer, there's a lot of steps and governance and investment that is needed to create some of these channels, but having that top-down support as a business has really helped us to expedite that and move that a lot quicker than otherwise. Even from a team structure point of view, it's been recognised that we need to bring additional expertise if we want to open up into new markets across retail media, and we've had that support to do so. And then finally, also as a business, I would say that we behave differently to a standard retailer. As a retailer and media centres of old, we care about your sales at Co-op, but actually being a media owner, which is what we want to be, we say we care about your sales full stop. So whether that is actually a sale in Co-op or whether that's a sale in a Sainsbury's or a Tesco, it's important to our brands, so it's important to us, and it's been really helpful to have that support as a business to be able to go after that as well.
Excellent. Kaitlin, tell us a bit more about the John Lewis journey in retail media and your focus at the moment.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you both. Top-down support is vital, and also getting that ad tech space right is really important as well. I'd say, as I mentioned in my first answer, John Lewis has been around for quite a long time, 100 years, and they have been playing into the retail media aspect, but just maybe more in traditional ways. So bringing those digital capabilities in isn't going to happen overnight. We need to fix the basics first, and then we can amplify with digital tactics. So that's what we've been working on over the last 2 years, is really fixing those basics, getting the foundations right, and then building on top of it. You're also navigating change within retail media, but you're also navigating change within, for us, a high street, a digital ecosystem, which means it can be really difficult to navigate change within changing environment. So I think what we've done so far is we've really focused on getting the basics right. We've played a bit of catch up, so we've only just released sponsored products and sponsored banners across our Waitrose and John Lewis over the past 18 months. And now it's about taking those strong foundations and really elevating it, playing into those first-party data opportunities and so on. So yeah, that's our next focus, and our big opportunity is to really grow next.
Fantastic. Now let's talk a bit about the brands that you're working with, and maybe some of the success stories so far. Again, Elton, we'll kick off with you. I know sort of creative partnerships has been quite a focus for you at ASOS. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean we do probably around 70 big creative solution shoots per year, and that's kind of culminates in a lot of still and video creative that we'll produce, normally around a creative concept for a brand. And often it would be steeped in data and insight to kind of support an objective that a brand is trying to achieve. But one of the most recent, like last week, we were at New York Fashion Week with Tommy Jeans. Some of our bigger brands, we have, I would say, special agreements, but it's where there's an alignment of the brands coming together and really complementing one another. So for Tommy Jeans, ASOS is, I would say, kind of a strategically important wholesaler in the UK, and probably a preferred partner in terms of positioning of their product with a fashion retailer. So in this case, we do combine budget in some ways. So sometimes we'll also contribute, which is not necessarily how retail media works. Normally brands are investing with a retailer, but in this case it's a kind of really big partner of ours. So in this case we were at New York Fashion Week. We sent a couple of fairly high-profile influencers with kind of mid to high-level followings. We had TikTok content shot, so we'll have an influencer. Like we had an interview with Tommy Hilfiger himself. We had some behind-the-scenes prep content shot on a big kind of old Staten Island ferry that was out of commission, used as a catwalk. There were some really great shots and content that was filmed there. We had some behind the scenes after party content, and that kind of stuff really lights up on social media. So social media is obviously a big driver in the fashion industry. It's massive in the kind of our target audience as well. ASOS has got 45 million followers on our social, so it really plays a critical and really influential role in our campaigns. And that was a kind of huge success this week. We had lots of exposure, lots of earned media around it. So in addition to that, we'll take that content, we'll distribute it across a display ads campaign, we'll put it into our targeted emails and newsletters, push notifications, and across the site on kind of hero imagery in addition to the social. So that's quite a good and possibly slightly unique example, but it kind of really brings a brand together, and it puts an ASOS spin on it. So we shoot it in a way where it's a little more cheeky than maybe Tommy Jeans would have shot it themselves. You know, we push the boundaries slightly, but that's what they kind of rely on us for. So,
Great campaign.
Example, yeah.
Ellie, I'll come to you for a bit of a discussion around, there can be often industry commentary around is retail media performance marketing and about driving conversions, or is it more of a long-term brand building opportunity as well? So I know you've done some research into this area recently, and what's your perspective on performance versus brand building?
Yeah, I think particularly from an in-store point of view, it's definitely seen as, I say historically, but I think there's still an understanding that it's a conversion channel. But when as in a customer will walk into a store, they'll see an ad and pick up a product, and there's a conversion right there and then. But actually, when you look at convenience as a retail media owner, we have, and Co-op in particular, we have 2,500 stores across the UK. Our members shop on average 2.5 times per week, and 2 in 3 people in the UK live within 2 miles of a customer of a Co-op. So if you then turn that into a brand campaign, you've then got scale, you've got frequency, and you've got proximity to customers. So actually, is it possible that in-store, from a convenience point of view and from a Co-op point of view, actually can be higher up the funnel? It's not just conversion. Can we also have brand awareness as well? So, it's a great hypothesis, great question to have, but we wanted to prove whether that was the case. So we looked at running a few trials, a few case studies with our partner, Sakana, who have access to all retailers, or majority of retailers' sales data, so we could actually see if we ran a campaign in a Co-op store, is it successful? Do we have the sales uplift in a Co-op store point of view? But actually, can we drive a sales uplift in competitor retailers within the same area? So you have a campaign in a Co-op, sales uplift, and if there's a local Sainsbury's or an Asda, actually can we drive the sales uplift in those stores as well? We also did test versus control methodology, because a lot of the questions we get when we talk about this is, what if there's a price promotion in one of those other retailers? What if there's a spike in weather? But actually, when you have test versus control methodology, we're comparing 2 stores that have the same macro environment, but one has media and one doesn't. So we can just look at what the incremental sales impact is. So we ran 3 case studies across different categories, because we wanted to understand whether it would work across all different categories. So we had ice cream, confectionery, and a beer brand as well. And all of the results came back positive. All of the Co-op stores had a sales uplift, and the surrounding area stores also saw a considerable uplift as well. If I just look at the beer brand, for example, the incremental sales value in those other supermarkets was more than 4 times the sales value at a Co-op store. So if you think about the fact that that was a positive sales uplift in Co-op and a positive ROI, if it's actually driving sales in other retailers as well, that ROI potentially, or hypothetically, it could be up to 4 times higher as well. So I think from what we've learned, at least in convenience, retail media can absolutely still be that conversion channel, but it can also be that brand awareness channel as well.
Great. Kaitlin, can I get your perspective on this, both at John Lewis and Waitrose, but on the 2 points of performance versus brand, and also online versus in-store? What's the John Lewis view?
Yeah, so I think a simple answer to the question would be no. Retail media really plays in brand awareness, and it also plays in consideration and conversion, definitely. Happy to be challenged though, of course. And the big thing for us in terms of brand awareness is our long tail brands. So our brands that when our sales team do some client tiering, they might not get a look in at the retail media piece of the pie, I suppose. So launching a ad tech self-serve platform means that they can have access to all of these placements that we have available via their laptop, which is great. It means that they can get a piece of the pie even if they've got £100 to spend for the year. The one thing I would say is that you don't turn one of these ad tech platforms on, sit back and watch the money roll in from all these brands. We have quite a few suppliers, and we always use the example of on Waitrose we have a man and he just sells cheese, and his expertise is in his cows. It's not in his marketing strategy. So in order to get him onto an ad tech platform, we have got to do quite a lot of work in-house to train him up, make sure he has the capabilities, make sure he has the expertise to not only look after his cows, but to also excel his business, I suppose, on Waitrose and get to the top of those PLPs and listing pages. So I think there's definitely both brand awareness, conversion and consideration, but there's also an element of these long tail suppliers that are getting involved now that maybe wouldn't. And I definitely find much more reward from getting those brands involved. And it's normally quite incremental for our business to get them involved.
Fantastic. And I'll stay with you, Kaitlin, just in terms of looking at the number of vertical sectors that are playing currently within retail media. And obviously there's a lot of focus on FMCG, CPG, all the major supermarkets are playing in this space. And I think just last week, Ocado have now announced a new retail media offer. So obviously there's a lot of media attention on those sectors. Do you see any sort of untapped vertical sector opportunities at the moment? What do you think's next in retail media from a vertical sector perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So you've seen the likes of Monzo, Revolut, Uber, Deliveroo, they're all playing in this space now. If you go into your Deliveroo app, restaurants will be able to sponsor their restaurant to go to the top of the listing pages. There's definitely an opportunity. Across John Lewis Partnership as well, we have a lot of other services than just, I suppose, going to shop in John Lewis or Waitrose. We also have our pet insurance, for example, or our credit card, or loads of things like this that we have that you might not be aware of. We haven't delved into that yet, but there's definitely an opportunity there for retail media. And I think as long as you've got a good customer base, you've got shoppers coming into your store, or you've got a good loyalty scheme, I don't see why anyone couldn't create a retail media network, whether they're vertical, horizontal, or in any sector. And I think it's really exciting.
Great. Ellie, on a similar note, do you think you have to be a certain sort of size of retailer or brand to really take advantage of this opportunity? Is this just for the bigger players, or can some of the smaller players get involved?
I think simply put, yes, anyone can be involved, but I think obviously depending on the size of a smaller retailer, it will vary on what they're able to do, and I think there are a number of barriers in terms of if you've got a low customer base and therefore a lower data set, your ability to get involved in first party data is quite small. If you don't have the infrastructure, the costs, depending on what you want to do within retail media, potentially higher than what the retailers are willing to spend. And last, with such a growth in retail media at the moment, in terms of expertise, it's probably going to be a lot harder for a smaller retailer to necessarily bring that in-house. That being said, I think it's just about looking at it differently. I think is there potential for a group of smaller retailers to actually band together and try and get that scale? Is there a unique selling point that is differentiated for them, and so it's worth a brand coming to that smaller retailer? An example, actually, there is a retailer that just has one supermarket, but they're the main supermarket in a town, and they do full takeovers across the front of the store, and they're really high impact with big brands like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, etc. as well. So that could be that they are able to do something at such a scale in one store that it commercially works for them, and it's such a big opportunity for the brand that it works for them to do it. So I think it's just about thinking how to do it differently. Yeah. But I think there is an opportunity, yeah.
Elton, in terms of the global landscape, do you think there's a real opportunity here from a UK market perspective for the UK to take a leading role on the global stage, and also any perspective on that from an ASOS perspective day to day?
I mean, UK is relatively advanced. In terms of total ad spend and so on, we are way behind the US, but I'd say UK is leading Europe, but UK and Europe together are quite a powerful force.
Yeah.
And from a kind of a technical advancement perspective, I would say some of the bigger UK and European retailers are certainly up there in terms of maturity levels, in terms of proposition, if you compare us to the US. A lot of the big global retailers like Amazon and some of the others that have global representation have been responsible for some of the fast tracking into UK propositions and European propositions, but we're definitely up there. I think what we've seen recently is a bit of a gold rush in terms of retailers really thinking, oh my goodness, if they haven't got a retail media proposition maybe 2-3 years ago, it really has been quite a rush to get that launched. I think what a lot of retailers are finding is you actually do need scale, so I think you do need scale to make it work.
Yeah.
You also need a lot of buy-in from your leadership, and not all retail leadership is necessarily supportive of a retail media proposition. They might like the success it generates with brands, so the brands do win if you do it properly. They might like the revenue and the profit that flows. However, there's often a lot of resistance against any disruption that retail media might cause. You need inventory on the owned and operated sites and apps. You need investment in ad tech and targeting infrastructure. You need certain guidelines in place that aren't always aligned with the retail business. So I think it can be quite challenging, but in terms of how UK compares to the rest of the market, I think we're up there. Also, we've got some really good governing bodies with IAB and ISBA. They're all talking about unifying the definitions of metrics across retailers, which is one of the key problems that big brands have. When they're comparing the efficiency of one retailer against the other, they want to have a level playing field of metrics. What is ROAS, what is attribution, what is a new customer on different retailers, especially with the grocers. That's kind of really where you got some massive budgets with a lot of different options. Less so in fashion, I think, but we're kind of getting up there with metrics. I don't think we are any far behind or much far behind the US in that problem. I've spoken to some of the big retail operators out there, and they're also grappling with the same issues. The IAB in the US is in contact with the IAB in the UK and Europe. So I do think there is a lot of alignment. I do think we've actually come up to speed quite a lot in the past 5 years too in the UK.
Yeah. We've talked quite a lot about the opportunities in the retail media space, but Elton's just started moving into the area of current challenges that need to be overcome. So let's stay with that now and come back to you, Kaitlin. From an operational structure and setup perspective internally, what are some of the challenges that you've found at John Lewis?
Yeah, so we've got many teams that are involved in retail media, and as I said, it's a lot to unpick. We've never had a centralised team that is just covering retail media, which is something we've now got, which is really good. We have a retail media matrix, which includes sales teams, it includes propositions team, where I sit, and then it also includes an activation team, so that all sits under one sort of matrix. That doesn't mean that there's not other teams involved. We still have to get content involved. We've got the product teams, we've got buy-in, we've got commercial, we've got customer, and they're all getting involved. But that change to go from it being a bit bitty everywhere to one centralised core team that are responsible for retail media I've seen a massive step change. The one thing I will say here is, I say the core team are responsible for retail media because it's been going on for such a while in John Lewis and we're still trying to unpick things. I wouldn't say we have sole responsibility at the moment, but we are trying to make sure that centralised team is the one that is owning all of those sort of initiatives that are brought forward. It's not easy, right? It's a lot of change, and as I said before, it's change within change, so I think we'll get there. We're also building those strong foundations and those strong propositions in order to, I suppose, accelerate our growth. So yeah, it'll be really exciting to see what the next couple of years brings for John Lewis Partnership.
Kaitlin, are you seeing some of these same challenges at Co-op, and particularly the measurement piece we touched on there? How are you seeing that at the moment? Elton's talked about the IAB standardised framework, which hopefully will be a positive moving forward. I know you also wanted to talk about in-store standardisation as well.
Yeah, so digital standardisation came out first when IAB actually announced the in-store standardisation, I think yesterday, which if there is anyone who's looking to get involved, they're open to feedback on it until the 1st of November to get involved in it, which we absolutely will. I think it's an important one because there's also, as well as measurements, there's a lot of different naming conventions for the same channel across stores. So actually when you're looking at measurements, even if the measurement is the same, if you're naming the channel something else, it doesn't always correlate. So I think that's really important. Yeah. In terms of the standardisation that's come out, I think a few key things to call out would be, although it's all in store, we have both print and digital channels in store, so actually differentiating between the two. There's a little bit around language as well, so there's been a lot in the news around TV budgets moving to in-store, for example, and it's referenced in the IAB standardisation as well, but actually is there almost a clash where you get, at the moment, a lot of brands are set up, they still have a brand team and they have a retail media team as well. So you could have one touch point where the different metrics they are used to dealing with, especially if it's coming from the likes of TV, are different. So I think it's important to make sure we have standardised metrics, but we have enough metrics to also resonate with the right customer from a retail media point of view as well. And the last thing I'd say, and probably most important, is measurement. So from the stuff that was released yesterday is around a focus on test versus control. A lot of retailers, I think historically, and some still do, is more based on pre-versus live methodology, which doesn't really take into account the macro environment of like price, weather, etc. that I mentioned earlier. Whereas test versus control, you can really look at just those incremental sales and actually look at what the media has driven. And it's what we work at with Co-op Media Network in partnership with SMG and Plan Apps as well. So we're hopefully in a great position, but I think we'll start to see more of it, and any retailers that aren't necessarily doing it that way, especially if this gets launched as the standardisation, probably need to start looking at it so they can mirror the market as well.
Now in the audience there probably are some agencies specialising in retail media or tech vendors in this space, and you will all be working with agency partners and tech vendors. So let's have a bit of a discussion around how best to collaborate. And Kaitlin, I'll start with you. How do you engage with your partners? And would you have any advice for anyone in the audience?
Yeah, so I think what Elton said on that there's like this massive rush to create a retail media network at the moment. You're never going to be able to just start a retail media network with the expertise and tech that you've got in-house. If you can, then brilliant. But sometimes it's just not possible. So you do have to lean on these industry leaders that have tech propositions, or they have agencies that have proven its success that you can lean on. One of the most important things with our agencies and our tech providers is they're an extension of our team. So we use them, but they come and sit with us in the office. We have lunch with them. We celebrate successes with them. We also go through challenges together. And I think that's a really important part of it, is bring them into your business, make them feel like they're part of it, share things with them that you might not share with on a session like this. And yeah, lean on them. I think don't be scared to say, we don't have the expertise in-house, let's go and source that expertise in the market. I mean, if you're using agencies for everything, then you might have a problem, but for those specific things that you need some expertise for, I think it's a great decision to make.
Ellie, what's your experience working with agency partners and tech vendors at Co-op?
I think, we've been working with SMG for 7 years now, and we rely heavily on our partners for their expertise. You know, as Kaitlin said, we've got a lot of expertise in our internal team, but with having such a breadth of media channels as well, it only makes sense to work with the expertise in all of those channels and with those agencies and really grow together. You know, we have Co-op Media Network launched in January, and we are made up of Co-op employees and SMG colleagues as well, but we are one brand. We all sit together in the office. We are one team. We have Co-op Media Network email addresses, and small things like teams being joined up, I think technology as well. I will say one issue is sometimes crossing over technology, getting them onto teams took a little bit of a while, but now that we are together, we are one team, and I think it's the best of both, having one cohesive team together, but also still having those expertise coming in as well.
Elton, ASOS perspective on working with vendors and agency partners?
I think a lot of business leaders within retailers are not ad tech experts or experts on data privacy or whatever the technical topic might be. So what I find and what I've experienced and what I would like actually is especially software and ad tech vendors, you really need to support your clients, the retailers, in understanding your product and making it easy to say yes to a proposal. And that would be, really making it simple, clear, emphasizing what the important things are, because like I said, a lot of us are not necessarily tech experts first and foremost, and a lot of the time we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. So you've got, in a retailer setting up a retail media business, you've got some advertising or proposition people who are, have some knowledge but aren't tech experts, and then you've got a tech team who are technical experts but not ad tech experts. So there's a lot of gaps in between those two teams in terms of knowledge. So I found out the hard way that you can buy different tech that ends up not being able to do what you thought it could do or wanted to do. So I would emphasize strongly, any kind of vendors out there going to pitch your product, first of all, think about what are your USPs when you compare it against the competitors doing the same thing in the market. What are the must-haves that the retailer must get right? And then what are the nice-to-haves? And be quite open with that, because if you can be a consultant and an advisor through that process, you're much more likely to win the business. And also the other important component is, if you convince the business owner in the business, they still have to go and get the budget from the finance director. They have to convince the tech team it's a good idea. So you really need to have a proposal that kind of is really well explained, highlights the important things, and also is a good business case as to why to invest. Yeah. And I found that the companies who can do that efficiently are the ones who win the deal, and then you're more likely to be successful in kind of implementing that. And then when you do the deal, that's actually only where it all starts, because you have to then go on a journey to implement different ad tech within a retailer. And you have to go and garner the support from the different teams to invest the resource in implementing your particular product, which is often a 3, 6, 9 month undertaking. So there is a lot of complexity with regards to that. And I would just say the easier vendors can make it for internal teams to say yes and justify the investment, the more successful they'll be.
Yeah. Great, I'll come to the audience very shortly if anyone's got a question they'd like to ask, so just have a think whilst I ask a final question. Just a bit of future gazing to wrap up. What are you all most excited about in terms of the next 12 to 24 months? Ellie, I'll start with you.
Well, it might seem like a shameless plug to say convenience retail media, but I do really think there's going to be considerable growth over the next 12 to 24 months. We are the first retailer in the UK to launch a convenience retail media network as sort of a sub-market within retail media, but we're not the first in globally. You've got the likes of 7-Eleven and Gulp Media in the US, and we're already starting to hear sort of rumblings of some other retailers starting to look at convenience media, which means what we've done, the launch has worked. People are seeing it differently, and that it's complementary to the likes of a big box retailer shop as well. So I think we'll start to see more of it over the next year or so, and the sort of sub-market, as I said, will start to grow more as well, and we'll start to see more and more convenience.
Great. Elton, what's your perspective?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. I think one thing, none of us really understand how big artificial intelligence is going to be. I think from an advertising perspective, it's going to be interesting to see how creative development and content development progresses when we can really take advantage of artificial intelligence, in addition to audience targeting and audience creation and content matching. I think there's a huge role that's going to play. Apart from that, I would say, as a lot of retailers are betting in with the on-site proposition and getting that right, I think there's going to be a lot more you'll hear around data collaboration partners and kind of off-site targeting using first-party data from retailers.
Yeah. Kaitlin, what are you excited about for the future at John Lewis?
Yeah, so I think the two main things for us is closed-loop measurement. So that's something we really want to get our arms around in the next 12 months. So we really want to make sure that, say, if a customer, if a brand comes to us and advertises on our website or our app and they go in store to purchase, we can actually give that insight back to the brands. So that's something we want to do, especially as 69% of our journeys are actually omni-channel. So that's really important for us to be able to give the full picture back to brands, especially from a ROAS perspective, and then reinvestment. So that's something we really want to focus on. And insights is huge for us at the moment. So we've got a partnership with dunnhumby. So we're really trying to unpick all of that. And then the second thing is personalisation and targeting. We really want to get on that off-site journey. We want to get on the on-site journey. We want to be able to give our brands the opportunity to use some of our insights. We've got 8 million loyalty card holders, like it's quite big, and we want to be able to use those insights to not only give our brands the best experience, but also our customers. So they're the big things to watch out for from John Lewis over the next 12 to 24 months. And of course, the Christmas ad. Can't come on a panel without plugging the Christmas ad. Be ready.
Absolutely. Everyone always looks forward to
It's
that
around
every
the
year.
corner.
Fantastic. I'll give the audience an opportunity to ask any questions. We've got a couple of minutes left. Does anyone like to ask a question? There's a roving mic at the back there. Bramwell's got his hand up with the lady behind you, Bramwell. So the gentleman's just coming up with the mic, so bear with us. It's not working. One moment. Mic not working. Try again. We can try and you can try and shout your question to me, and I can pass it on and then repeat it to the audience. What's the? Yeah. One sec. We may have the mic. Sorry, guys. Mic may be working now, so everyone can hear a bit more easily. Let's try again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Fantastic.
Yes.
So my question is to Ellie. You said that it's difficult for smaller brands to leverage retail media. So could you envision a future where bigger brands like Coop would collaborate with smaller brands or even competitors for consumer convenience?
Sorry, it's a little hard to hear, but about smaller brands getting involved in retail media.
Brands and
Yeah.
competitors to collaborate. Bigger brands
Yeah,
like Coop.
Of course, I think earlier was more around like the supermarkets themselves getting involved, but it can sometimes, I think, be a bit daunting for smaller brands as well. In terms of entry-level budgets, I think it's easier where potentially where you've got digital spend and the entry point is lower. But I think at Co-op, we've got a range of opportunities for our smaller suppliers as well, in terms of like running events, for example, where the cost is split between brands, so the entry level is much smaller, but actually the reach and scale is still sizable, so they can get positive results as well, because ultimately we don't want small brands to invest and not be able to get that return on investment as well. We have also launched a program this year called Co-Creation, which is sort of a pitch process, but the idea is co-creating campaigns with brands. And we've opened that up to small suppliers so that they can actually get involved and we can give them additional support as well. And they have the opportunity to win media spend as well. So as Co-op Media Network and aligning to sort of Co-op values, we are aimed at being inclusive for everyone as well. So we still do have in mind how we can work with smaller brands as well and give them an opportunity.
I could comment on that as well, actually. So over the past decade, you've seen a lot of Chinese retailers, smaller brands to start with, that have actually grown into massive brands in their own right. They used Amazon as a really good launch pad where, and actually the big brands didn't see that coming at first, where you had some pretty sophisticated small brands starting to invest in especially low funnel like sponsored ads. And they got pretty good pretty fast and developed, they had a good cost price, good price point, should I say, but they also had a very good marketing campaign to support that. Even though they weren't spending at the same level of budget, they kind of got in there and they started growing their businesses quietly at first, but quickly. And the beauty about digital marketing is that there's no limitation of the shelf. So, search results, there's an endless number of search results, especially in big sites. And if you are clever about when you are live, and not every big brand is going to be on 24/7, 7 days a week. So if you're savvy and clever, you can actually build a pretty good business with a relatively small budget.
Now we're about to, more hands are going up. We're probably going to get kicked off fairly soon, but we'll try and rush in a few more questions. So if you wouldn't mind handing the mic over, thank you very much.
Hi. I just wanted to ask a question around the media network, like infrastructure, I would say. With regards to the media network, I know that it's different for each different retailer, but let's say for someone who produces products and selling to multiple retailers, what are the basic necessities for a media network in terms of being able to track how we're performing with every retailer's media network?
I'm struggling to hear, sorry.
Yeah, it's hard to hear that actually.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
It's just a bit
Just
quiet.
make sure you're talking loud.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask, on the retail media network, what are the fundamentals of a media network for each retailer? Let's say, for example, if I'm selling products to multiple retailers, what are the basics that a media network should accomplish such that I'll be able to track how I'm performing on a retail media network?
Are you talking from a brand perspective?
Yeah.
Like a brand in a bunch of different retailers,
Yeah.
and then advertising, and how you track
Yeah.
success?
Yeah.
I think it goes back to one of our points about standard definitions of the metrics across retailers. So you're going to be looking at certain things like return on ad spend, new customer acquisition, and how sales are being attributed to your campaign. There is probably a decent level of consistency across certain metrics like ROAS, where you have big companies like Criteo or Amazon, and the definitions are fairly similar. I think it gets a bit more difficult if you're looking at a broad range of different metrics, though. So you can probably do a decent job on a few core metrics, but beyond that, you might need to delve into understanding what a definition or how a sale is attributed on one retailer versus the next.
I would also just add that being that brand is quite an interesting position to be. So, for example, on johnnurse.com, we might sell a brand called Dyson, and Dyson might also sell across Currys and Argos. And that brand, Dyson, can see how they're performing across all three retailers. I can only see how they're performing on John Lewis. So that's quite a powerful position to be in, to see where you're actually over-indexing in terms of sales, ROAS, as Elton was saying, impressions. You can see where to upweight your spend with which retailer. So I'd say look at all of them at once and get those key metrics that align across the board. Yeah.
Do we have time for one final question? I'm just checking at the back. I think we've got, the gentleman's got the mic.
Hello.
Off you go.
I got a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Just talk nice and loud.
Okay. I got a question about your strategies on social media like TikTok. So I saw all your got TikTok account, but I can't see what's your strategies on there. Do you have any plan for live sale?
Are you talking to me about ASOS, or just everyone?
Like ASOS, do you have any like strategies for lifestyle on TikTok?
Lifestyle on TikTok.
Live.
Live. Oh, live.
Oh.
Live. Well, at ASOS, we are experimenting with TikTok Shop, which is mainly focused around the own brand. So ASOS own brands. We own 13 of our own brands, and we're focused mainly on promoting those brands on TikTok. I think it's quite a controversial topic because we work with 800 brands, and 13 of those are owned by ASOS, and the other 800 plus are the big brands you'll recognize. Now, if we start advertising, this is my personal view, if we start advertising that on TikTok in a TikTok shop or live environment, I think we risk kind of cutting ASOS out of the loop. Because if that builds momentum, you know, we're obviously training customers to shop on socials, and then why do they need a retailer? So I have a personal view which I think is quite a dangerous place to play. Having said that, though, it's working really well for ASOS own brand, which I think is valuable. So I think it depends on each retailer's opinion on that.
I think we're out of time now, everyone, so I need to wrap this up. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoons. It just remains for me to thank the panellists. We had Kaitlin Craig from John Lewis, Elton Ollerhead from ASOS, and Ellie Prendergast from Co-op. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thank you.
Thank you.